At this point, I have no visa, no passport, and I have no flight, and I'm supposed to be leaving for camp in 8 days. And then it all turns for the worst. You cannot get on that flight. Oh no, there is no one to be seen. This just sounds like I'm definitely gonna get kidnapped. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I cannot believe I'm telling this story on the anniversary of everything kicking off last year. The story originally starts in August 2018 when I applied to go to camp, but nothing really went on for a few months after that. I got my application, I got signed to a camp, I carried on with my application, and everything was going really well. Then it came to around March or April of 2019 and I applied for my visa appointment at the US Embassy in London. I was super excited to go get my visa. It was going to be just like a day trip because we live kind of far from London, but close enough that we could go in one day, pick up my visa and come back. So my visa appointment was due to be around the last week or two of May, and I had a month after that before I was supposed to head off to camp. Now me being me decided this is a perfect time to go to India for a week. Why I did that, I have honestly no idea. It was probably a stupid idea, but it was also a really good trip, so I'm glad I did it. But basically, when I applied for my appointment, they told me it will only take a few days for your passport to come back, so I didn't need to worry about booking the India trip. It was a few days after my appointment, maybe like 2 weeks or so I didn't really need to worry that I wouldn't get my passport back in time. So it rolls around to a few days before my visa appointment, and I look onto the checklist that I've been sent of all the things I need to take with me, and I'm like, yeah, passport, got this, got that, got the other, all the things that I needed to take. I was like, yeah, I've got. And then I came across this thing that said DS 2019, and I was like, honestly, I have no idea what that is, where it comes from, how am I supposed to get this within the next couple of days before I have to go for my visa appointment. So I got into contact with camp leaders, and they were like, oh, you should have received it in the mail. That's quite surprising that you haven't received it. And I was like, oh, that is strange. But I said to them, I've been at uni, so maybe my mum collected it for me and I haven't seen it and she hasn't told me about it, or we've just forgotten about it. So we had a look around and we couldn't find it anywhere. And then they told me the date that it tried to be delivered to my house on, which was I think the 6th of April 2019, and I was like, that date rings a bell. We left for Florida for 2 weeks on the 6th of April, and by the time we got back, that parcel, they didn't tell us what it was, had already been sent back to who it came from. They couldn't really tell us much about it. There was no details of it. It was just a parcel that had been sent, and I had no idea. And I think after that I just kind of forgot about it. Then obviously it rolls around to 2 days before my visa appointment, and that's what it was, the form that I needed to take with me to get my visa. So they were like, right, I'll tell you what, it's kind of fine, you go to the appointment without this form and you leave your passport. We'll send them a form as quickly as possible, and once they receive it, they can then issue your visa and send you your passport back. And I was like, great, that seems all well and good. How long will it take for that to get back to me? And they were like, I would say around 2 to 3 weeks. And I was like, oh no, I've just paid however much money to go on this once in a lifetime trip to India, and it's in 2 weeks. Like, I cannot risk not going. I mean, to be fair, I could have done, but I really didn't want to. So I was like, is there any way around this? Like, I really do not want to have to miss that India trip that I've just paid for over all of this. And they were like, I guess in a way you could wait until after your India trip and send your passport off with the form that we'll send you, and they'll send it you back with a visa. And I was like, that sounds great, but I don't come back from India until the 10th of June, which I'm pretty sure was a Sunday. Could have been a Monday actually. And I was like, I don't get back until the 10th of June and my flight leaves on the 18th of June. And they were like, yeah, it is not looking likely at all that that is gonna happen in time. You're just gonna have to go to camp late. And I was like, no, please no, like, do not let this happen to me. It basically turned out that that was my only option because I really did want to go to India, and that was in less than 2 weeks. And since the form hadn't already come, that was going to take extra days because it had to come all the way from Texas. So I was like, I'm gonna leave with my passport now, and when the form comes, as soon as I get back from India, I'm gonna send the form off back to the US Embassy. They should be able to issue my visa as quickly as possible. But they were like, you are very likely to have to go late. I was supposed to head out to Boston on the 18th of June, but my camp didn't actually start until the 19th. I was supposed to be staying in a hotel because there was a whole situation where you had to get a certain bus, and there were no flights that I could find that were going to arrive before the bus on the 19th. So I was like, I might as well just go on the 18th, stay in a hotel, and then head to the bus the next morning. But somehow my flight got all messed up on the 18th. They were like, sorry, we've had to change the schedule of your flight. You're going via somewhere else and you won't arrive until late in the evening on the 18th. And to be fair, that would have been fine but basically they were like, so we can either put you on this flight or we can just cancel your booking and you can get your money back. And I was like, oh my gosh, I will have my money back, because it meant then I wouldn't have to pay for 2 flights, because if I hadn't have been able to change it, which in 99.9% of circumstances I wouldn't have been able to, I would have had to pay for 2 flights regardless. So I was like, right, I'm gonna cancel that flight and I'm not gonna book a flight until I get my visa. And I was just hoping and praying that my visa would come on time, which seemed very slim. I was doing all the Googling and researching how long does it take for people's visas to come back, and it was a whole array of things, especially because it was peak season. It was like the very beginning of June, which is when the majority of people head off to camp, and all sorts is going on. So at this point I have no visa, I have no passport because I've sent it off to the US Embassy, and I have no flight, and I'm supposed to be leaving for camp in 8 days, or actually 7 at this point. So I'm waiting, and I feel like for the next few days I was driving myself crazy because I had no idea what was going to happen, whether I was even going to get to go or anything like that. Obviously I had to pack all my stuff because it could have come on that morning and I could have had to book a flight half an hour later to go. The other thing is last minute flights tend to be more expensive, so I was super worried that it was going to cost me like $1,000 for a flight to Boston, which I think my original flight was like £300 because I booked it so far in advance. So I was dreading that I was going to have to pay a fortune for a flight and everything was just going to go horribly wrong. So I carried on waiting and waiting, and eventually my passport turned up around 4 or 5 days before I was due to leave, and I booked my flight. I don't think it cost that much in the end, which was really good. Everything was completely as it was supposed to be. I had a few days to finish off packing, get all my stuff ready. I had my visa with my passport back and everything was looking great. And then it all turns for the worst. So it gets to the day of travel. I was so excited. I remember on my visa day I actually met up with one of the girls at the camp that I was supposed to be going to, and we had a chat, and then I was chatting to her in the airport and I was like, oh yeah, I'm so excited to meet you again later, like it'll be so much fun, I can't wait to start this camp journey. And I was sat in Manchester airport, I think around 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. It was very early, and I was having a connecting flight from Manchester to Edinburgh and then Edinburgh to Boston. I have no idea why. I guess because it was such late notice, I just wanted the cheapest flight and that was what I could get. So I'm sat in this airport waiting for the flight to Edinburgh. It was in like the little regional flight section, so there's just a load of people who are mostly like business people. I'm sat in the little airport lounge and I feel like I've always wanted this to happen, and honestly now I've realised this is not something you want to happen to you. So they go on the loudspeaker and they're like, can this person and Lauryn please report to the front desk? And I was like, oh okay. And I was on the phone to this girl at that point and I was like, okay, I need to go because I've just been called. I don't know what they're gonna tell me, but it doesn't seem very good. I was kind of panicking. I mean, obviously I'd flown to India on my own the week before, so it's not like I wasn't experienced flying on my own or anything like that, but I was just like a little bit worried because I was like, I have no idea what they're about to say. Are they gonna let me on the flight? I get there and they're like, yeah, so you cannot get on that flight to Edinburgh, because if you do, you will miss the flight from Edinburgh to Boston, and there's no more flights out of Edinburgh to Boston today. Now bear in mind, by this point I decided I was going to go on the 19th rather than the 18th, so I was going to arrive with plenty of time to get the last bus of the day that would get me to camp on time on the right day. So that was supposed to all go to plan, and they were like, you cannot get on that flight. And I was like, because it's been delayed by like 30 minutes, and that 30 minutes obviously would have made all the difference. And because I had a bag in the hold, they had to make sure that they had time to transfer over and all that kind of thing. So at this point I was like, I am screwed, like what the hell am I gonna do? I'm on the phone to this girl again. I'm like, right, I need you to tell me what to do. Obviously she was a kid as well. I say kid, she was like in her 20s, and I was just like, I literally have no idea what I'm supposed to do now. And they were like, but we can get you on the direct flight from Manchester straight to Boston at 3 o'clock today. And I was like, oh no. Seems perfect to most people, doesn't it? But my issue was the last bus was early, and my flight obviously at that point wasn't gonna get in until like late, like very late. So I was like, I'm gonna be stranded in Boston. This is not good. Bear in mind at this point it's around 8 o'clock in the morning, and they were expecting me to wait until I think 3 or 3:30 in Manchester airport. Not only that, it was a different terminal that I was leaving from, and I was like, what, like I'm gonna have to be in this airport on my own for like 8 hours or something. I have no idea actually how long it was, but it was a long time. Bear in mind at this point it was a normal working day, so my mum was at work, my sister was at work. Thankfully my grandma, who dropped me off, I phoned her up and I was like, Grandma, this is disastrous, what the hell am I gonna do? And she was like, I have no idea, like you're just gonna have to wait and get on that flight. And obviously we were both a bit like, I have no idea what to do. So I had to walk. If you've ever been to Manchester Airport, you will know Terminal 3 and Terminal 2 are about 10 miles apart, I kid you not. I had to walk all the way there with my giant suitcase. And when I got there, I asked them, they printed me my new ticket for the flight later, because honestly, I had no other option. I was gonna have to get on that flight. And I was like, what is the case with compensation? I'm gonna be stranded in Boston with nowhere to stay. I'm gonna have absolutely nothing. And they were like, sorry, we can't do anything for you. You're gonna have to go back to Terminal 3 and ask them at Flybe, because Flybe, in theory, were the ones that screwed it up, because I was flying with Flybe, who coincidentally now have ceased trade. They have obviously gone bust. I mean, to be fair, it was through no fault of their own. But basically, I had to walk all the way back to Terminal 3 to go and speak to the people at Flybe, and they were like, yeah, sorry, we can't do anything now. You'll have to do this after you've flown. And I was like, after I've flown, I'm just gonna be stranded in Boston on my own. What am I supposed to do? So they give me this little leaflet. I think they actually gave me like a £7 voucher or something to use in the airport for food, because I was going to be trapped. I don't honestly, I'm not sure how much they gave me, but it definitely wasn't that much for me to keep going all day. Bear in mind, I would basically have had to have breakfast and lunch off that money, because I was there from about, I think I actually arrived at the airport around 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and I wasn't going to leave until 3:30 and get on the plane. So they give me this money. I walked all the way back to Terminal 2, dropped off my suitcase. In fact, I just remembered as well, before this, when they took me off the first flight, it took like an hour for me to get my bag back, and I was so scared that they were going to take off with my bag and it was going to end up in Edinburgh, and it was going to be a whole bigger problem because I was going to be in Boston stranded with no stuff. But anyway, I eventually got my bag back. I went back to Terminal 2 for the second time. Bear in mind, this was a long walk, like a really long walk. I walked back to Terminal 2 in my giant suitcase. I dropped my bag off going to the terminal, and I remember I went to Frankie and Benny's for lunch, and I just sat there like, I was so worried. I was like, what the hell am I gonna do? I have no idea about what's gonna happen when I get there, because there's no buses for me to get on. So at this point, I contacted the people at camp, and I was like, this is completely out of my control. I'm not going to arrive until maybe 8 o'clock tonight. And they were like, oh, okay, whatever, it's fine. Now, bear in mind, the camp I originally went to, if you haven't seen my other story time, which explains all of that stuff, go check it out, I will link it above. But I was going to a camp in Vermont, so I had to get from Boston all the way to Vermont, basically on my own. So I was speaking to the people, and they were like, it's fine, we'll figure something out, just get on the flight and let us know when you've landed. Get on the flight eventually. I'm pretty sure the flight was fine. I think I actually might have had an entire row to myself. I'm not even sure why. And I land, and I'm like, right, what now? So I start speaking to a bunch of people, and they're like, just get on a bus. So I had to get on this random bus, and it went to Dartmouth. I think it's Dartmouth College. I could be wrong, I'm sorry if that's like completely somewhere else, but it's some college that's like near Vermont-ish, and that was like on the way. I get on this bus, and it's going for like 3.5, 4 hours, and I'm just sat there like, who knows what is going to happen at the end of this bus ride. I eventually get there, and they call me, and they're like, yeah, we're sending someone to pick you up. And I'm like, okay. So I get off this bus. At this point, I think it's around 11 o'clock at night, maybe a little bit later. The bus drops me off. There is no one to be seen. I am just in the middle of nowhere at 10 or 11 o'clock at night on my own with a giant suitcase, and I have no idea what I'm gonna do. And I was just like, right, I literally don't know what to do. And obviously at this point at home, it would have been 4 o'clock in the morning, so nobody would have been awake. I mean, I'm sure if it was an emergency, somebody would have picked up the phone, but I didn't want to keep like asking people what to do because they would have been asleep. I just remember being sat on this bench for like half an hour, just kind of worrying what the hell is gonna happen. I think my phone must have had like a small amount of charge, because the person phoned me and they were like, we've sent somebody to get you. They have like a green car and it's a man. And I was like, oh my gosh, this just sounds like I'm definitely gonna get kidnapped. They didn't even seem very sure about the whole situation. So eventually they told me the reg plate on the car. I go over and I'm like, hi, are you this person? I think they must have told me their name. I'm pretty sure by this point my phone had run out, so I was so worried about getting in this taxi with a complete random guy. I get in the taxi. Honestly, he turned out to be super nice, and we just chatted about stuff the entire way. He was really nice. It was another 45 minutes to an hour drive from there through the dark middle of nowhere. Thankfully he was chatty and nice, because I think I would have been so scared if he hadn't said anything and we'd just been driving through darkness for like 45 minutes to an hour. He eventually gets there and he's like, oh, I've never been here before, do you know where you need dropping off? And I'm like, I've never been here before either. So he eventually just drops me off and is like, all right, see ya. And I'm just there on this camp. It's pitch black, everyone was asleep, and I had no idea. Like, I literally had no idea. My phone had completely run out, so I couldn't even ring anyone from the camp and be like, help. Like, I literally did not know what to do, and I was just there. It was completely dark. I just had to wander around. Like, I had my suitcase and there was no paths. It was all just like mud or like grass, and I just had to walk around hoping that somebody might hear me and wake up. Eventually, after probably looking for 15 to 20 minutes, which I know doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're completely stranded and you've had a really bad day at this point, you just want somebody to come. So eventually this girl came. She was super lovely and she was like, yep, you're gonna be in my bunk. She showed me to the bunk and then everything seemed fine. Until the next bit, which is actually the last story I told, part 1 and part 2, which happens approximately 12 days after all of this, and it gets so much worse. So if you haven't already watched those stories, make sure to go watch them if you are interested in this kind of thing, because honestly, they were a crazy time. If you did enjoy this story time, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more Camp America stories. I have plenty more to tell and they're all equally as crazy. If you haven't already checked out my other channel, which is all about Disney, make sure to go check it out. I will also link it up there, and I'll see you next week with a brand new video. Bye!